От студио Резиста, Мартин Карбовски, София, гледате трансконтинентална видеовръзка от Централна Европа. Днес ви срещам с Каталин Новак, родена 77 година. Тя е унгарски политик, заемала поста президент на Унгария от 22 до 24 година.
So I was not only the first woman, but I was also the youngest president. It's not a merit, it's just a fact.
Тя самата е вице-президент на Фидес между 2017 и 2021 година. И забележете, майка на 3 деца.
And that is why I start to stand for family values.
Каталин Новак е твърдо ангажирана с противопоставянето си на това, което ние наричаме джендър идеология. Тя е съосновател на организацията XY Worldwide, чието цел е да промени негативните демографски тенденции.
I would say that we could really show that this pro-family approach actually did have the positive consequences and the results.
С президента на Унгария разговаряме сега госпожа Каталин Новак. Hello, Mrs. President. Can I call you Mrs. President? Because this is not very usual.
Yes, indeed. Hello. So I was not only the first woman, but I was also the youngest president. It's not a merit. It's just a fact but it also means, of course, that you don't have as much experience as those who are older. And it also means that you have to prove double times at least that you are capable. So I think it's easy and difficult.
But what are Mrs. Novak's main political values and goals? Your conservative politic, traditional values, family, Christian values. Here we don't have Fidesz in Bulgaria, in Sofia. These values will be kept in first place in Europe. What do you think? Създайте мечтания дом заедно с Ултхаус България. По-бързо, по-чисто, по-изгодно и ефективно строителство. Естествени материали, дизайн по ваш проект, съвременно строителство, прецизна изработка, доказано качество. Реализирайте вашия мечтан дом заедно с Ултхаус България.
I think that these values, for example, for us Europeans, our Judeo-Christian heritage is just our history and our everyday life. So if you just look at us, how we celebrate our holidays, how we live our everyday lives, it just reflects the traditions of our Judeo-Christian roots. And that's one thing. So let's say that's the Christian culture and the Judeo-Christian roots, and also that the way of life. That's one thing. And the other thing is how you yourself or anybody considers himself or herself being a believer or not to be a believer. But I would say that's a much more personal issue. But I think it is important that we don't deny our roots, that we don't deny our Christians. In that sense, I am conservative, meaning that, yes, I think that our traditions, our roots are very important. So I admit that. And also family. Not only the family that you actually live in, meaning your own children, but the extended family. So whenever you meet a new person, for example, what do you start to talk about? It's the family where you come from. What do your parents do? How is your relationship with your parents, with your brothers or sisters, if you have any, and the whole extended family. And then, of course, the family that yourself you started, your marriage, even if it's a successful one or not. But when a marriage also has the fruits of children, I think that is just a beautiful achievement, and that's, for me, that's the biggest gift, that you can raise children and you can just experience. I'm a mother of 3 children. They are now almost grown up, 21, 19, and almost 17, so they are not small anymore. but on a daily basis, experiencing how they develop their own characters, how they become themselves, other personalities, and you can be proud of being their mother. I think it is just something that I would never leave out of my life. So I would always regret not having any children. And that is why I start to stand for family values, meaning the strong relationship between the members of the families, between parents and children in the first place.
But what do you think for an untraditional family? Because European Union have good ideas for untraditional families, for example.
Yes, I think it's a very, now it's a very fashionable, I would say, debate to discuss the definition of the family. But I don't think that's the most important issue. I mean, everybody can decide on his or her own what he or she considers being a family. There are people who consider their dogs being part of the family, or it's just, you know, a matter of conception, how you yourself define for yourself family. But it's also important, I think, that at a state level, somebody appreciates or acknowledges the importance of family ties, meaning the relationship between parents and children. And that is, I think, the strongest tie or the strongest basis of our long-term societies as well, because without parent-child relationship, you won't have any society. So it is just something that should be considered as a solid basis of our nations, actually, and that is where family as a value comes to play.
I agree with you, but in Bulgaria nobody speaks. We have no politics who speak our nation.
Sometimes I think there is also a misperception about the nation and nationality or national way of thinking, for example. And I say that being even a nationalist in a good sense, just standing up for your own nation, that is a value. I'm very much in favor of our EU membership. So I think that our EU membership brought us a lot, both to Bulgaria, also to Hungary. So I think it was a great achievement that we could enter the European Union. But it should never mean that you give up on your own nationality. So I stand for a Europe of strong sovereign nations, but you have to preserve your sovereignty. And what is so beautiful and interesting about Europe is really this diversity, that we are so alike, but also so different from each other. If you look at an Italian, a Swedish, a Brit, or now not anymore members of the European Union, but still a French or a Bulgarian or a Hungarian, you can tell that we are not just exactly alike. And of course, inside a nation, so not all Hungarians are alike, but still we have the same feelings, all of us, when it comes to our anthem, when it comes to our national football team and they are successful, then we just share the same feeling. Or if we speak about our historical heroes, then we all just somehow have the same feeling. And this feeling of holding together, having an attachment to each other, that is actually what, for me, nation is. And I think this has to be kept at a very, very high level, and we should never deny our belonging to one nation.
We like you here in our team. But how to be a sovereign nation without demography? I want to speak with you for demographic crisis, problems and solutions. Why we get into this crisis? What's happened after communism? What do we all should to do, and especially the Europeans, especially Bulgarians, especially Hungarians, because we have the same demographic problem. Next 30 years in Bulgaria, we will lose 20% of our population in next 30 years.
Thank you for bringing up this issue, because for me, this is the biggest challenge of our times and also the coming decades. I started with a British demographer, global NGO, a global nonprofit, which targets this issue actually. This is called the XY Worldwide. And the reason why we started to speak about this problem is because many think still that overpopulation is the global threat. And I have to tell you that the underpopulation, let's say, or the decreasing birth rate, it's not only a problem in Bulgaria or in Central Eastern Europe or in Hungary or even in Europe as such, but it has become now a global problem. I should mention Korea, for example, which is one of the most successful economies of the world. But in the meantime, they are suffering a huge demographic crisis. Can you imagine that in Korea, for example, there is a 0.7 birth rate or total fertility rate, which means that in a family of two parents, there are less than one child in average. So it is just leads to a huge economic crisis, social crisis, not only demographic one. And the same goes for our countries and whole Europe. The only reason why Europe's population is still increasing is because of immigration. But immigration is not a solution. I mean, of course, anybody can support immigration, but we shouldn't just let ourselves being or let this problem being masked by immigration, because it is not a solution to the root cause. If you don't have enough children, then you can, let's say, import new people, but it won't solve the problem that young Bulgarians, Hungarians, even French now, or Italians, or I could name any of the European countries, they are not having children anymore, not so much. There is not even one country in Europe where this fertility rate is above 2%, which would be enough for the replacement level. So it means that we are just, going down the slope, all of us. And you asked why? Because you realize that this is a huge problem. And first we have to realize that this is a problem. And then we have to also find the reasons why. And if we can name many reasons, we could discuss it for hours. But if I have to name just one reason, it's because the younger generations or the members of the younger generations are delaying parenthood and choose many times, or not choose, but end up, I would say, being childless. And also because they waited so long. I don't know, I am not asking you any personal question. I don't know if you have children, but so many of, let's say, of our age, if having children in their 20s or 30s, they realize that they are successful in their professional lives, but and they also want to have children, but they just wait. And then it's too late. And, when you end up in your late 30s or early 40s, and then just want to have children, you then face difficulties, infertility problems, which are higher and higher in Bulgaria, in Hungary, all over. And that means that you end up being childless. And that is what is happening. So we just, with the XY Foundation, we just started to monitor that the childlessness rate has significantly increased in all of our countries. So that is the root cause for us. And this is an unplanned, unwanted childlessness. So it doesn't mean that young people say that, okay, I don't want any more children. It happens, of course, but that's not the average. Most of the young people nowadays in our societies still want to have children. The problem is, and I could name the reasons why, I don't go into details unless you ask for something, but the problem is that they delay parenthood and they end up being childless.
I want to say to you that in Bulgaria we use Facebook, not another social net, and I find a lot of propaganda to stop having kids. This is a part of Facebook, a society, stop having kids. This is a propaganda. From where is this propaganda, stop having kids? I cannot understand who do this.
Of course, you can have conspiracy theories. I won't name any conspiracy theory, but I also say that sometimes it is so humane that just because many people end up being, more and more people end up being childless, just as I said, then they want to see their own choices, their own lives being legitimized. And that means that, they say that, well, that's just a perfect life without kids. So they encourage other people to meet the same solutions as they did. As me, I myself, having my experience, having the 3 children, I always advocate for motherhood or for parenthood. And maybe those who are childless, they advocate for childlessness. I even say that I don't argue that they have the legitimate right to do so, but I remember that and it's also so difficult because your society has also changed so much, ours as well. We don't have those traditional huge families where you experienced that babies are being born in the family, you see them growing up. It's just the natural rhythm of life that, you have kids and then you start working and this cycle, it's not anymore like that because it's not true that that different generations live together, for example. It's not our lifestyle anymore. And that also means that, for example, I can again refer to my own personal life. I gave birth to our first child 21 years ago. And can you imagine that this baby was the first baby that I saw even from close? So I never saw any baby in real life. So my own child was the first baby that I could hold in my hands. I could even experience seeing. So you don't really see the beauty of having kids. And I just make a reference to Asia, to Korea or to Japan. It has become more and more fashionable to treat dogs as, they even call them dog child. So as if children could, as if pets or dogs could substitute children. We also have 2 dogs. They are just around all the time. We love them. But it's not that you have them instead of your children. And they, for example, in Japan, they sell more pushchairs for dogs than for babies. So many things are changing. For me, it is weird, honestly, and I feel sorry for those who don't even have the chance to experience what it means to become a parent. Of course, anybody can decide so, but I will always advocate for parenthood. And just one more thing is that I also read all these, you called it propaganda, I would say this, let's say, advocacy for childlessness. They even say child-free instead of childless, as if it was some kind of freedom, not being forced to take care of your children. I don't consider it freedom. Freedom for me is that you can choose whether to have or not to have children. For me, that's freedom. And I'm free to have children, and everybody is free not to have children. So that's actually freedom. But also I read these, let's say, these news or these calls for childlessness when they say that if you are climate conscious, don't have children, because the ecologic footprint of children is so high that the most you can do in order to decrease your ecologic footprint is that you don't have children. And that's something that I completely disagree with, because for me, I think climate consciousness is an important issue. I mean, of course, we want to preserve our planet. But why do we want to preserve our planet if not for our future generations? I mean, the planet is not for itself. The planet is for us, for humanity. So it means that for humankind. So that means that if I want to preserve it, I want to preserve it for my kids. For that, I need to have my kids. So I think it's just a contradictory issue. And for me, it is very alarming that still many young people, just because they want to do better and they want to be good, they want to be climate conscious, for example, they want to protect the globe, they just maybe decide not to have children because of this reason. And I think this is very dangerous.
Mrs. Novak, are you nostalgic for communism?
No.
But
yes.
Me too. I'm not nostalgic. I don't like communism. We fight with communism. But maybe you don't remember when we were in communism, they say you must have children. You must have 3, maybe 2, maybe 3. This is very important for our nation, for our land. But now they say it's not necessary to have. That is politics. That is not just propaganda. That is politics. I think Brussels want not to have me and you to have children in Ungarn and in Bulgaria. Am I right?
I see this and hear this. I think, for God's sake, our world, our countries are now free. So we don't have a dictatorship anymore, which is for me a great achievement. You yourself, I myself, we were born during the communism. Those who weren't, they don't even understand what it means to really have a freedom of choice, the freedom of choice of our own life, for example. But sometimes what happens when you have a freedom of choice, all of a sudden, it just falls into your lap. Then you think that you have to deny everything what was before. And I have to admit that, for example, some things actually functioned quite well. For example, the nurseries, the daycare system, it was very useful that, let's say, in enterprises and in big companies, or, these state-owned companies that you had back then. But still, you had, for example, a nursery at the workplace. And it was very useful because those who worked had children at the same time, they could make use of it. So there were many good things, or these housing benefits there that used to work there. But when you force somebody to have or not to have any children, I don't see that as a good solution. Either force anybody to have, or either force anybody not to have. What I believe in is that nowadays, and this may be a little bit awkward what I'm saying right now, but just think about it. Is it now, let's say, from an economic point of view, logical to have children? Does it worth it? If you just count, I'm an economist by profession. Yeah. So I say that we have a pay-as-you-go pension system. That means that if you don't have any, the pensions now are financed from the payments of those who are working actually. So that means that the young people pay for the pensions of the elderly. And if you don't have any children, you equally will have the same pension financed by the children of those who decided on having children. So it doesn't incentivize you to, if you think of your, let's say, older life, to have any children for yourself, because you will be covered anyway. Or that's the same with so many issues that if you are a father or a mother, you just realize that having children, it costs a huge amount of money. So it is very, very expensive. And on the other hand, if you don't have any children, you have much more money for yourself. So that's if it's just purely an economic decision, I would say that now it is disadvantageous to have children. And I just think that as a state or as decision makers, it is important that the state compensates this for those people who want to have children at the end of the day. So I think that is the most important, that you really enable young people to have the positive decision about children, so that they don't feel that if they decide on having children, they will have so many disadvantages, not speaking about the fear that they give up their individuality or their independence. So many things that speak against having children. So I think that you just have to put some positive arguments also into the back end.
Do you agree with me? Europe must have a strategy in that direction, demography. Do you agree with? But we don't have it.
You know, in theory, or even I would say in practice, there is, for example, a commissioner who is Šuica, is a Croatian commissioner who is responsible for demographic issues. I was very pleased to see this evolution when the decision was made about having her as somebody who's responsible for demographic issues, but I don't see anything is happening. And I'm telling you also one of the reasons why. There are many reasons. One, it costs a lot of money, of course, and you don't see the positive outcome in the short run. That's even if you invest a lot, you won't even see any results. Or
can I interrupt you because
sure.
now the Brussels say we must save billions for rearm Europe.
Yeah.
But for demography, what happened with demography? This is.
I completely agree with you that we have to invest much, much more, because if we don't think about this problem in the long run, Europe will lose its competitiveness. I'm again just picking an economic argument. I think it is important that you have to safeguard your demographic weight as well. And if you look at the proportions in the past, actually, and in the future, what Europe represents as part of the global population, our significance is constantly decreasing. So we are just giving up on our future at a European level. And of course, you can speak about a successful education policy, which is very important, or healthcare policy, or social policies. But you have to keep in mind that our societies will just look so different in 50 years. Just as you yourself said about Bulgaria losing 20% of your population, you can have this forecast for all of our countries. And that is really alarming. So I think we should invest much more. But another reason is what we just have been speaking about in the last minutes, is that this is also a very personal issue. You know, it's your family, it's your choice about having or not having children. And I just see that many politicians are afraid because they don't want to intervene in anybody's personal life. What I want personally all the time is that I want young people to be able to make well-informed decisions.
Nobody speaks in Bulgaria for our biggest problem. What is the situation like, demographic situation in Hungary?
There was a very successful period of time. I was also responsible for family policies and demography in Hungary, in the Hungarian government back then. For 8 years, I was doing this job, and during this period, we had great achievements because the number of marriages doubled. We had the highest increase in the total fertility rate all over Europe. It was 25% increase in fertility rate. Then the abortions dropped to the half. So it was really, I would say that we could really show that this pro-family approach actually did have the positive consequences and the results. I also have to admit that then later very difficult years came. You know, COVID, and then the war in Ukraine, and many economic difficulties arising also from them. And also, I think, admit that we had a very, very complex, and we still have a very complex family support system, financial support system. But you know, what is new today, it's going to be just natural tomorrow. So people always price everything. They say, oh, yes. First they say, wow, great that you are so supportive. But 1 week later, 1 year later, everybody gets used to it. And so maybe the value of these family supports also decreased somewhat. But now there are new decisions. I have nothing to do with this anymore, but I very much welcome the decision, actually, from the Hungarian government to introduce a full tax exemption for mothers. First, we introduced it before for mothers with 4 children, lifelong full exemption from personal income tax paying. Then it's going to be introduced for mothers with 3 children, and later on for mothers with 2 children. So that means that you are much more acknowledged, appreciated financially also if you are a working mother, to say it as simple as that. And that's a unique family support scheme. And I think it is, for example, great that that way Hungarian families are once more supported to have and raise children.
All these rates are because Orban's politics?
Yes, and for the actual government, it is very important to put emphasis on families.